back, rivals. This is Xonia, and you are in the zone. This week, we're going to be helping the beginners out there, and maybe some medium-level players, learn how to make decent, if not great, decks. Today, I'd like to cover 3 important points, 3 stages for building your deck, and then how to critique your deck and improve it further. First, for our 3 important points. I've been asked quite a few times to give someone's deck a look over. For one reason or another, people aren't confident in their deck building skills, or sometimes they just want a second opinion to check if they've missed something. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, sometimes I simply don't have the time to look at every single person's deck, and even spend, say, 10 minutes critiquing it. Oftentimes, all I really have time for is giving it a brief glance. And then my comments are usually only to remind them of how that they'll need to play with it, and what to watch out for. See, there's no such thing as a perfect deck. If there was, everyone would be using it. Even playstyles can cause decks to perform very differently. One person's DT-T1 first place deck could be another person's worst nightmare. Thankfully, this further proves that UR is not all about the cards. Yes, cards can make up for a distinct lack of ability, but only so much. This brings me to the first 2 important points. 1 is that you'll never have a perfect deck, so don't worry about it. There's no such thing as a flawless deck. And 2 is that your deck should match your playstyle. Because of this, it also makes giving deck advice quite difficult. If I tell you that bringing 2 5-star cards is really risky because it's not stable in a 25-star deck, but you prefer the risk element because you think it's worth it, then my advice won't be helpful. It can also be difficult for me or others to give advice if our playstyles differ quite a lot from yours, because people's tolerances of risk versus reward are rarely the same. So this brings me to my 3rd and final important point, which is to learn different playstyles. See, if you only have one playstyle, you'll never really be great at UR. You need to understand as many playstyles as possible, because it will help you react and prepare for whatever your opponent throws at you, and it will help your spider sense go off when something feels a little wrong. This has just as much to do with deck building as the actual deck itself, because you can have the best deck in the world and fail with it if you don't know how to best utilize it. Aggressive decks need you to be aggressive. Olding decks are going to need you to be patient. Being aggressive with an olding deck is an easy way to throw away matches that you should have won. We'll leave it at just these 3 points for now. But up next, I'd like to cover some steps to follow when making your deck. As for the 3 stages of building your deck, when you're making a deck, you could say that there are essentially 3 different stages. Some require you to be thinking about several things simultaneously, so having a solid understanding of the game, the newest new bloods, and your current collection are important to quickly get through these stages. If you aren't comfortable with all the game's cards, then I recommend things like going through your collection once a week so you know which cards you have, to keep and maintain a list of cards that you want to obtain next, and also in checking urdb.curlad.net often to peruse the new cards and the cards that you don't have, just to get familiar with them. You certainly don't have to do this, but if you don't know what you could be facing, then you won't make the best choices for your team. Remember, you should know your enemy. So stage 1 here contains 4 parts that you should kind of be processing at the same time in order to help brainstorm the foundation of your deck. The less specific you are, the more you'll find yourself flipping between cards and clans that you like, instead of making progress on making your deck. First, you should think about, is there a mission you want to complete, or a specific card that you want or need to use? You should also be thinking if there's a specific clan that you want or need to use. Then, consider the format that you want to be playing in, ELO, T1, or T2, and then your type of deck, a mono, half, or a leader. All of these are relatively simple, and each one will help inform the others of how to fall in line. So for example, if you're going for an ELO deck, then obviously you can't have leaders. Most people also have a favorite card that they like to bring to ELO, so that can help you decide at least one of your 2 clans, or which clan you'll be bringing as a mono deck. For example, if you really like XXII, then you know you're going to be playing with Nightmare. Up next is Stage 2. In general, Stage 2 comes second, and Stage 1 will help to mold it. but occasionally it can come first and predecide your entire stage 1. Again, it has 2 parts that you'll need to be thinking about simultaneously. First is deciding your setup, and second is the theme of your deck. Next, you're going to need to decide on your setup and whether you want a theme or not. If you're playing in T2, there's no cap, so you can pretty much pack whatever you want into the deck. Therefore, I'll focus on ELO or T1 25-star setups here. As you can see, I have a list of all potential 25-star setups. First and most importantly is that while I will argue that the 2 bolded setups are superior to the others in their all-around function, I will also say, very importantly, that you can make any of these deck setups work. Don't box yourself into the 2 that I'm going to suggest. But if you're new, then you should try to stick close to the ones that I've mentioned. They should be a bit easier to handle due to better stability. If you're doing something other than 25 stars, you can still apply the idea of stability versus a high risk-reward setup with more high star value cards. However, if you're running a clan with really strong 3-star cards, then feel free to increase the number of 3-star cards in your deck. Now we'll come back to this more in a minute, but theme can be a bit easier to decide first, and it can help impact what your setup is. So, for theme, what kind of theme do you want? In step 1, did you decide on a card that you want to build a deck around? Does it have something that you can build a theme around as well? So for example, if we go back to XXII as an example, then do you want a power manipulation theme? If not, did you choose a clan? What type of themes can you build with that clan? For example, maybe you have piranhas and decide that you want to run a pill manipulation deck. Or perhaps, like me, you're running a deck specifically to finish up some LD missions. Now in general, theme decks are fun, but they do have some downsides. They don't offer as much stability as a balanced deck. And why? Well, if all your cards have only one kind of ability or 2 kinds of abilities, then they'll all be weak to the same thing. If your deck is balanced, then you'll have a better chance to counter any and everything that can be thrown at you. Now, let me be perfectly clear. Just because you have a card in your deck does not mean that you will draw it when you need it. You might not draw your stop card when you finally get a match against a Roots deck. However, in general, I can still assure you that having it in your deck will still make it better overall. Just make sure that some of those niche abilities like stop aren't necessary to make the card good and usable. So this raises a very important question. Why would anyone ever use a themed deck, Xonia? Well, one good reason is for missions. Having a deck of plus life, damage, minus pills, etc. is necessary for LD missions, for clan missions, or best of all, even global events. Making a themed deck, and the best themed deck that you can, should follow these same principles. One good example might be to include Wormhole in a poison deck. While he's not usually that great of a card, he can be amazing in a poison-themed deck, because SOA will protect his ability, and defeat can help you ensure that you get that poison in. Another good reason is that it can cause you to play in ways unexpected by your opponents. If you've got a mission, you'll play cards in ways that your opponent may not be expecting. You'll also bring cards your opponent may never have seen before in ELO play or a different play. If you know how to leverage your cards and your opponent doesn't really know those cards well, they won't know whether to go all in or to save pills, because they may not have a good feel for how people generally play those cards, which only get used for a theme deck. Anyway, let's go back to these balanced decks then. So what does balanced really mean? Well, there's no specific recipe for a balanced deck, but there are some general guidelines I've found. For example, having 1 SOA card, 1 SOB card, 2 to 3 loss cards via DR or defeat, and 1 nuke. Now for some balanced decks, all of these may not be possible to have in your deck. Sometimes it won't work out because you just don't have the card, or the only SOB cards are complete trash for the clan. Hi there, La Junta. That's okay though, just do your best to meet these guidelines as much as you can. SOA and SOB cards can mess up your opponent's plans and can help you to win more easily. They can also cut through DR, defuse a nuke, protect your own ability or bonus, or force olding decks to play pills. They can allow you to vary your playstyle and how you're going to actually win the battle, and it will keep your opponent on their toes, because they're never sure if they're actually going to get their ability or bonus this round. Loss cards can allow you to win during the rounds that you're going to lose. See, every round should bring you some kind of benefit. These cards can allow you to win battles well in advance, and allow you to play your cards in different ways than normal. If you can find a 3-card combo, then you may be able to end the game after round 2 because your opponent didn't see that he just wouldn't be able to outdamage you if you go in with a Fury on round 2. Finally, Nukes may be easily crippled, but if no counter is there, your opponent has to focus solely on your nuke. Every move has to be played around it, because if not, then you might be able to win the game in just one round. A good example is Kolos. You can win with your other 3 cards and never even play Kolos, because your opponent knows that they must either go all in to stop him, or that they can only play a few pills in order to be able to stop Kolos in later rounds. So you can end up taking all 3 rounds using very few pills. Having a balanced deck is very important, particularly in events. You want a deck that allows you to vary how you play in order to keep your opponent on their toes. If your deck requires you to draw one specific card to win, or can only really win in one generic way, then it's not really a good high-tier deck. Your opponent knows exactly what you need to do in order to win, and that puts you at a disadvantage. Alright, now back to the setup. After this, you can then probably finally decide on your setup. And this one will be a little bit faster now. The basics of your setup, again, are whether you want a deck that has less punch, but your low star draw will be awesome, or are you willing to risk a difficult low star draw in a match for the opportunity to get better high star draws. Regardless of your answer, you can compare the basics of your setup to the game of Limbo. How low are you willing to go? If you're comfortable with 4 2-star cards, then go for it. If not, then you have to be willing to reduce your best high star draw. Still, your setup isn't entirely decided, even if you know what you prefer, because now we need to move on to Stage 3. Stage 3 is choosing the cards that you want to use. In Stage 3, you look at your cards and the clans that you're going to use and try to decide any specific cards that you want. You need to look at the cards that will fit your theme, complement it, protect it, and then decide which cards you want more than your other choices. So take a look at the tools that you've got to use. See, some people start with this stage, and of course you can, but I recommend keeping this stage in mind as you do the other stages first though. To the best of your ability, search through your cards and decide which look best to you. You need to be willing to change your previous decisions as well. Sometimes you'll realize that it would be better to do something different, and that's okay. So, Xonia, how do I know which cards are actually the best? Well, that's an easy answer. See, right there, that's a really easy answer. Just play them all. Wait, what, Xonia? Yeah, play them all. Mission hunt. Try them all. The best way to learn if a card's good or not, for you, is to play it. You'll quickly learn that a lot of the game's cards are actually pretty good. One good example is Saira from FPC. Is she the best 3-star? No way. But she's not a bad card either. I don't care if she's not in a single high-tier deck. If you're a new player and just trying to get to know the game, then she is just fine. She has tons of damage and attack manipulation to help in low-pill battles. Her biggest downside is the 6 power, which can be overcome with lots of pills, which you can also afford to use because she's got so much damage. She's also going to bring a lot of fear into play, causing opponents to pill a bit more just to be safe, which can help you out sometimes too. Look, let me just be upfront with you on this. The only way to figure out which cards are awesome is to play with them yourself. Seriously, the best way is to play them and understand each card through experience. So never be afraid to put a card in your deck that you've never seen before. But you should always be evaluating your cards while you're playing them. This leads me to the final section of today's deck building video. Critiquing your deck by assessing your deck and playstyle. If you find that your deck isn't winning because you're getting KO'd too much, then you need to check and see if you've got enough DR. If you're losing because your opponent just did more damage than you, then maybe you need more damage in your deck. If you find yourself worried about opposing cards' abilities, then maybe you need to put more SOA in there. Assess your deck. Assess your playstyle. Perhaps you have too many early round cards and no round 4 finishers. Or perhaps you find yourself always having trouble figuring out which card to lead round 1 with. Do you need more attack manipulation? Then try adding some more of your own. Or throw in some pill manipulation. Are you getting crushed when you get those low star draws? Then maybe you need to change your setup and remove some of your higher star cards. Are you weak to SOA and SOB? Then can you add any cards which have stronger base stats? Do you have too many conditionals? Are you having trouble because you can't actually get your revenge cards on revenge rounds? Then can you take 1 or 2 out of your deck? As for playstyle, if you're overpilling, then maybe try pulling it back a bit. Try playing fewer pills. If you're always getting perfectly pilled and beaten, then start forcing yourself to play one more pill than normal. Look at how you're playing the deck and change how you play it, or change the deck. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Add pill manipulation, and then maybe your overpilling can be made up for, and you might find a theme that suits your playstyle perfectly. I found that I actually do much better with pill manipulation decks because I have a tendency to overpill sometimes. And so by putting in that pill manipulation when I first started playing using the Piranhas clan, I was able to actually make up for the problems and the deficits in my own playstyle, and over time I learned how to manage my pills better, and now I'm able to play other decks much better. You should be doing the same thing. After you assess how things are going, you can discover what your deck's weaknesses are, and then try to compensate. The main point of this is not to make a perfect deck, though. There's no such thing. Remember the 3 points at the beginning? Every deck has a weakness. Well, unless maybe you're running a DJ Core and Guru CR deck. The reason we still assess our deck is so that we can evaluate how we'll need to play in the worst situations. With some decks, you may just need to accept that SOA clans are going to ruin your entire concept and run all over you. And you're going to have to live with that. And you know what? That's okay too. Just do your best to make a deck where, when you look at it, it's hard to think of situations where it will absolutely fall apart. If you can minimize the difficulty, not remove, but minimize it, in those situations, that is your main goal. Of everything in this video, I think that this is the most important aspect to making a good deck. As long as you continue to assess and update your deck, it will eventually reach a stage where you're very happy with it. Just remember to assess why you got annihilated every time you get absolutely crushed. Through calmly evaluating the deck yourself, you can prevent those situations from occurring commonly. Many people just give up when their deck doesn't work. But please, don't scrap the whole thing. Refine it. It's not hopeless, and you've already built the foundation. Just make it better. Oh, and one more thing. Don't change it after every single match. Play a good number of matches, and then decide if something needs to change. Otherwise, you're going to be finding yourself adding tons of stop cards after every Geist match, and more DR after every Legenta match. As we said earlier in the video, this game is not all about the cards. You do have to play well too, and that's going to be hard if your deck is constantly changing. So don't scrap your deck just because you had a few bad matches, or just because one person managed to beat you with that deck. Well, that's all for our deck building video, so I hope that by keeping these things in mind, you'll have an easier time making your decks and improving them. By understanding your deck and the necessary playstyle required for it, you'll soon be able to take down even the best of players. If this was helpful for you, then make sure that you like it and share it. And if you've got any of your own personal tips, then please let us know and leave them down below in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe for more of my Urban Rivals videos. This is Xonia, and you've been in the zone.